cloud is not your cloud of choice, to our listeners, and you're on AWS or you're on the Microsoft Azure, there are still cloud-based solutions available to you. And of course, cloud-based has been offering a hosted cloud-based solution for some time as well, right? But certainly, go ahead. No, you go, Francois.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because Cloudbees started, and that's why cloud is in the name of Cloudbees. We started as a full cloud company, but because we were, of course, like anybody tried to be pragmatic and listen to our customers for some time, we moved back on premise, and now the on premise business is a big part of what we do, and we don't have, of course, any plan to change that in the future. But it's interesting to see that we are back to the cloud to some extent. So we are back to our roots, where we know exactly what SaaS means, how to operate a SaaS, and we are just ready to again, be ready with our customers when they are ready to go there because we have this experience. And back to your point, we, as much as we are really, now in this kind of very exciting partnership with Google. We are, of course, still working with AWS and Microsoft. Our products are available on their own Kubernetes solutions, and we totally embrace the multi-cloud strategy of our customers. It's just that there is this kind of special engagement with Google around Anthos and around our SaaS.
Absolutely, and that Anthos is it has the potential certainly to be a game changer as more and more companies are moving into multi-cloud, right? And a combination of hybrid cloud, multi-cloud. Francois, I feel like we wouldn't be doing justice to this interview if we didn't mention, how is this being affected, or how is this helping organizations who are, having to transition to a work from home, remote, and certainly, we are seeing now more than ever why it's important to have your resources not maybe on premise in a single data center, or and to have the power of the cloud, so that when something like this happens, you can transition to it and everything. But what are you guys seeing there, and how is this being affected or helping the situation?
So yes, of course, it would require, we could talk a lot about that and spend a lot of time, but the two things maybe I would like to highlight is one, for the cloud in general and the companies. I think one of the new type of business continuity plan that you need to prepare for as a company has to include not just the ability, like in the past, of just switching over from one data center to another. That was like a lot of BCP, was, oh yeah, I need to have a backup. It's more about being able to move workloads fast and safely from different parts of the world where people are going to be needed. And all of a sudden, you had maybe a very specialized high-speed connection from a group of people in one region to a data center on the other side of the world. But all of a sudden, problems exist there. You need to move things around, and you need to move workloads in the cloud. So it's coming from this kind of binary business continuity plan, switch over to use the network and be connected everywhere. So for your people and for the workloads that need to be moving fast to one part of the world or the other. And obviously the cloud, you cannot have data centers waiting to be used around the world as a company. But the cloud is that, the cloud is just regions, tens of them around the world, waiting for you to be used, provided that you have the ability with your technology, with your software, to move it fast to one or the other. And for that, again, the technology like Kubernetes allows you to do that quickly. So I think people will realize that if they have this kind of standardized API for their application, they will be able to do that in the future. So I think it's just going to push companies to accelerate their transformation so that they can move from on-prem to cloud and back in a way that is much better than it is today. So I think it's good for everybody in that space. And we just talk about Anthos and this kind of technology. So I think it's going to accelerate that trend, certainly. I think the other one, which is closer to DevOps and to the operations of software automation and software delivery, we talk about building factories to do software delivery. But a lot of factories today, if you look at the reality of DevOps at a lot of companies, there are still a lot of manual processes in the middle of the automation. So the automation is not end to end. You have a lot of breakdowns in some places. And when you say manual processes, it means that part of the automation today relies on people who have to be there in a factory to make it work. And what a lot of people have experienced around the last few weeks is that the operations of software delivery and of DevOps at a lot of companies have been disrupted because of this dependency on either tribal knowledge or on specific people. For those of you who have read the Phoenix Project, we all remember Brent, the famous Brent, who was needed for everything. And a lot of companies realize that they still have a lot of brands in their companies that because maybe Brent was having a Wi-Fi problem in his house and couldn't connect to the data center, all of a sudden everything was blocked because of things that never thought about. And so we can see already companies telling us, well, the awareness of the need for end-to-end automation, not just pockets of automation, is going up several levels at the management level, because all of a sudden those problems that were buried into the IT operations, now CIOs or other people have been suffering from that themselves. So I think it's just another thing that's going to be a great opportunity for us to help companies fully automate and not just automate pockets of the process.
I agree. And also, I would just mention that I don't think this move or this acceleration of digital transformation is a temporary thing that'll go back to the way it was when this is over. I think there's no turning back from that. Once you do this, there's really no good reason to go backwards, right? And so this is the new normal. This is the new way of doing things. I also think that companies who are already well down this path before this current crisis are faring better because the proof's in the pudding, right? They're already shifted, so they're all ready to deal with this, and they don't see the disruption maybe that some companies who haven't are seeing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of lesson learned already for companies, I think. And I fully agree with you. There's no looking back. I think it's just sometimes those kind of dramatic situations are also forcing functions for people who have no choice but have to experience things, and the working from home, there was this kind of crazy, rush for VPN and equipment for things that were not possible before, but they had to be possible. So there was no choice. It was not anymore, oh, we cannot do it. They had to do it. And all of a sudden now they realize that, it's another way of working. It has drawbacks, but also a lot of benefits. And I think it's going to change a lot of things in that space that will never go back either. So yeah, absolutely.
Yep. Francois, we're about out of time, but before we leave, I realized we never even gave people a URL or anything to go find out more about the CloudBees Google Cloud offerings and to get more information. Where can people go get more information?
Well, there is definitely, we have a web page for that on cloudbees.com. I don't know the URL by heart, as you can imagine.
Find it, yeah. I would imagine it's more than one web page there. But if they go to CloudBees, there's information on the Google Cloud platform now.
Yes, definitely information, and of course, they can reach out to us anytime, and we'll have a lot of information to share on that. Yes, absolutely.
Fantastic. Francois, we're out of time. I want to thank you for joining us. Congratulations again on this award from Google. I think it's well-deserved, frankly. And we'll be looking for more good things coming out of CloudBees in the coming weeks and months. Stay safe.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Thank you. Francois Deschauret, Chief Strategy Officer and co-founder at CloudBees here on TechStrong TV. This is Alan Schimmel. We'll be right back with some more.
SecurityBoulevard.com is the leading resource for news, analysis, and education on challenges facing the cybersecurity industry. SecurityBoulevard.com covers all aspects of cybersecurity, including data security, DevSecOps, cloud security, application security, network security, security threats, and more. SecurityBoulevard.com has the largest selection of security content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.securityboulevard.com to learn more. SecurityBoulevard.com, home of Security Bloggers Network.
Day is shining, so my code is blessed, and once honey is approving my pull request.
Getting online, today I work from home. Looking through her lines is going awesome.
It is so single responsible.
Open, closed, and substitutional. Interfaces are okay, and dependencies injected. She has written solid code.
We are remote and fully functional, together working over globe. We get things solved and build incredible software for the better world.
Day shiny and I'm running tests in the backend. Everything's getting stressed.
Take the power of my mighty hands. I can help you destroy your elements.
Oh, so sweet. Just take a look at him.
Whatever, let's fire really quick.
Captain Mommy, pretty little money. I won't leave you on the road.
We are remote and fully functional, together working over a globe. We get things solved and build incredible software for the better world. We are remote and fully functional, together working over a globe. We get things solved and build incredible software for the better world.
ContainerJournal.com is the leading online destination for centralized computing-related content. ContainerJournal.com covers all aspects of software containers, from container management, data management for containers, container security, networking for containers, to the entire container ecosystem, Kubernetes, microservices, serverless, and more. ContainerJournal.com has the largest selection of container-related news, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.containerjournal.com to learn more. ContainerJournal.com is operated by MediaOps Inc., the team behind DevOps.com, Digital Anarchist, SecurityBoulevard.com, DevOps Connect, and DevOpsDozen.com.
Hey everyone, Alan Schimmel, TechStrong TV. We're back in the studio. I hope you liked that little video from the Solve folks. It made me chuckle, and I said, you know what, let's run this. Anyway, our next guest up is Tim O'Reilly. He's the CEO of Zetaset. And Zetaset is, they're big on encryption. The core team there has had a lot of experience at several security companies dealing with encryption now. And at Zetaset, they just announced some great encryption for containerized environments, including Kubernetes, encryption at rest for the most part. But Tim can tell you more. So let's go to our interview with Tim O'Reilly.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey everyone, it's Alan Schimmel, and welcome to another interview segment here on TechStrong TV. Our guest for this segment is Tim Riley. He is the CEO of Zetaset. And Tim, welcome to TechStrong TV.
Thanks, Alan. Glad to be here.
Glad to have you here. Tim, our audience is a mix of DevOps and security and cloud native digital transformation. I realize some people may not be familiar with Zetaset, so why don't we start off with just a quick, kind of Zetaset background?
Sure. Zetaset is software only for encryption. That's meaning that there's no proprietary hardware that it has to run on. We can run on any generic white box, and because of that, we're able to sit closer to the core, and with doing that, we have high performance, and it's transparent when you're down that far, and we can scale across whatever geography, and because of all that, you're able to have a simple install, and the maintenance is a lot less than what would be expected of another encryption solution.
Excellent. And is this offered as, it's not really like a SaaS application because you get the software, you install it in your core?
Yeah, exactly. This is software. This is not, we're not providing software as a service or anything like that. This is downloadable or installable. We could have somebody come out, but that's the play we have here.
What about if it's in a public cloud?
We can run in there as well. We can run on-prem. You can run in hybrid environments. You can run in instance in Amazon or Azure or Google.
Excellent. So now that we've gotten that out of the way, Tim, let's dig in. You guys recently had a couple of announcements around encryption and cloud native Kubernetes containerized environments. Why don't you share with our audience a little bit?
Yeah, I think overall, getting from DevOps to DevSecOps, there are definitely a couple different checkpoints you have to have. One is obviously shared responsibility between the developers and the security teams. And one of the paths down that I think we all know is the integrity of a container. But in addition to that, you also need to have the data within the container taken care of. And that's where we come in. We have the ability, if a container touches and it mounts and it touches data, you may have a multi-tenant situation. Well, that data needs to be encrypted at rest. Now you take that up to the next level above just a container, and you can imagine with Kubernetes touching so many different containers, managing 1,000, there are so many attack vectors in there. And what we've done at Zetaset is we've created the ability, wherever these containers are spun up, wherever they're managed, we can encrypt the data that they're tapping into at rest.
Excellent. Tim, I'm sitting here thinking as you're talking, and maybe it's because of 20 years in the security business, but it seems like such a no-brainer for me. When you can buy a laptop today, and whether you buy a Mac or a Windows, there's BitLocker or there's encryption option built in. Why didn't they build an encryption option like right into, whether it be Docker or Kube or even take it up one level to these Kube distributions like an OpenShift or a Rancher or the Mirantis product. You know what? It seems like that should have been a quick checkbox in there.
I love exactly what you're getting at. You take a step back, go to legacy. How long were we dealing with data before encryption came in? Encryption really just took off within the last 15, 20 years, if you think back about it. Well, now we have this digital transformation where all this data now somehow needs to translate from point A in legacy to point B. And in doing that, again, we're speeding along, seeing the value that we can bring to a customer with that DevOps, with continuing innovation and development. And afterward, people are looking back going, well, we have more attack vectors in this new process. And with that comes the ability for data breach, data theft. And I think finally we've got to a point where there's so much data it could be anywhere. It could be in the cloud, on-prem, it could be out on the edge. And it's easy pickings for any bad actor. Finally, you see enough wise people go, wait a minute, we can't really go any further into production with all these containers until we have a way to protect the data at rest. And I think the adoption, if there's a great study by the Cloud Native Compute Foundation that just came out, whereby they show the various stages of DevOps, and the one that's production is the only one that's down. But now it's started to increase like this. And I think there is an invisible wall that says, all right, if we go any further into this, we're really going to expose ourselves. Imagine compliance, whether it's obviously GDPR or HIPAA, or even the new one, the Consumer Privacy Act California has and other states will have. there's a lot of data, a lot of personal data that's now in containers, and encryption needs to be fundamental to it. It can't just be password protection. It can't just be auditing and logging. You kind of have to have what I call the third leg of the stool, which is encryption within it.
Agreed. I guess my question is then, if I'm Red Hat or Mirantis or Rancher or any of the cloud players, even, public cloud folks, why, just like Linux comes with packages, why wouldn't I include sort of a Zetaset package into the distro?
I think it's wonderful because you have containers, and then you have Kubernetes managing thousands of containers. And again, there's data exposure there. Now let's go up to the next level, where I think it's pretty well known that Kubernetes is tough to manage in and of itself.
To say the least.
Hey, I'll salute the DIYers out there. That's amazing. But the other 80% of us are going to lean on AWS or the cloud, or VMware with Tanzu now, definitely Red Hat OpenShift, or even you'll see some of the infrastructure players like who we partner with. One of them would be HPE with their new container platform they just announced.
Yeah, I just saw that, yeah.
NetApp has Trident. So all these guys have this proprietary layer. And I think if you're going to enable people to manage Kubernetes, you also have to protect Kubernetes. One can't be without the other. And I think when I talk to these partners, and we are partnered with each one of them at some level, they all agree, well, if there's going to be a differentiator for each one of them, or just maybe espousing the importance of security, they see encryption as an integral tool in there. So you're right. Any distribution you have, it has to be a checkbox. It has to be a tool that's included.
Agreed. Now, let's talk about the practicality of encrypting, right? If we use Kubernetes as sort of the orchestrator, which is what it is, right? We kind of install this encryption across, whether it be dozens, hundreds, or thousands of containers, right, within my install. What kind of performance hit does that? I mean, at some level, if you're on a big cloud, huge infrastructure, it shouldn't really matter at some level, but it does still, right? And not everyone is on one of the big three public clouds.
I agree with the concern there. There's a couple different ones. If you go down a checkbox, you can scare people into saying, okay, encryption, we need it. But then the next part is, well, what are the inhibitors to it? Why haven't more people adopted it? And at the very top, you're absolutely right, it's performance. I'm sure some of your audience realizes this. Encryption will ultimately slow down performance because it is doing calculations, it's decrypting and encrypting. To me, the thing you need to reach for is, how do I minimize that performance hit? And the guys we have, I love them. They came initially from a company called Ingrian that went to SafeNet, and SafeNet went to Gemalto. They designed and built the initial key secure. And why I say that is, you need to take that experience and look at it and go, okay, I knew that we need encryption. I knew that we had to minimize performance, and now software is the way to minimize performance. Now that data can be contained in a container, it can be in a VM, it could be in bare metal, it could be in the cloud. But in all those instances, if you can put the data and the encryption around it at a low enough level, you're looking at performance impact of anywhere from 2 to 7%. And really, that's exactly what we wanted for the end users. And I think anybody, regardless of whether it's Zetaset, that is what everybody should strive for. I think, in my mind, the end user and the customer and the partner should demand, if I want to encrypt and have a differentiator, one of my value props should be that I'm going to make encryption so it does minimize, the performance impact is minimized. Now, if I can continue down that, another one of the inhibitors is transparency. Imagine Alan logs in, he's got to wait, and he check, and he's like, God, what is going on? There's no one login, and then the data is presented to you, and the performance does not impact everything you're doing every day. So transparency and high performance, I think that is a value prop that's compelling, and hopefully, in my mind, as encryption, I wouldn't say zealot, my guys at my company are, but if you're going to embrace it, take those two inhibitors off the table and make people want it. I'll leave it at this. My VP of engineering always says this, Tim, if we take all of the issues off the table. Why wouldn't you just encrypt? We're making it simple enough, like a password now. Think about an iPhone. It's always encrypted. No one knows it. And they've made it so easy that it's behind the scenes. We kind of view that as how you can look at encrypting containers and Kubernetes and these proprietary management platforms. Really take that step and embrace DevSecOps.
Excellent. Tim, I've got a question more, I guess, in the really in the guts of this thing, right? So in a non-containerized environment, hypervisor or bare metal, whatever, I've got all my data. My data maybe is in a database or not, or a flat file or whatever your data's in, and maybe that data is encrypted. And then, of course, we need to access that data for my application. So I pull it out of that data source, whatever the source is, decrypt it. It gets run in the app. Hopefully the app is hardened and, encryption in transit and all that. And when I'm done, that data gets rewritten to my data source file, and it's encrypted, right? Because it's encryption at rest. In a container, you don't have a single data source file. You're liable to have hundreds of data source files. So is each container, maybe this is an elementary question and I'm ignorant, but does each container have its own encryption, or is there a single encryption legend, if you will, right? Or across the multiple containers? Do you understand what I'm trying to ask? Is the encryption just that one container, or is it that same encryption pattern and key or whatever across all my containers, or however many containers?
I will say this. I spent an hour, I must have been about 6 months ago, asking the very question you did, and I needed the one-on-one. And here's how I could explain it. If you have the data, let's just do the usual cylinder that represents the database, okay? And you're going to have multi-tenant in that, all right? You're going to have one volume that's this, X, Y, and Z. Well, if there's one key to get to that entire database, if you have one compromised container, guess what? You get all the data.
The whole thing.
So what we've been able to do is if you've sectioned off for the multi-tenant with volumes, we have one key for the containers that need to use that data. And yes, that one key can be allocated to, say, 100 containers, but those 100 containers are only going to touch that one volume within a database. So effectively, a bad actor can only get to that. They can't find someone else's data within that. And that's probably the easiest way to describe it. And I'll just say this, take it up a notch with Kubernetes. Imagine there's all of a sudden a storage volume that covers, like on a vSAN, all over the globe, and how many different pieces of data you'll touch. And you have to be able to protect these ones. I mean, think about all those attack vectors that are there now. So we've been able to identify where we can encrypt, allocate a key for just the jobs that they are going to be touching, and the rest of the data is protected. So it's not easy, and if you can minimize performance, that's a differentiator. And I think that really is the concern for, I think, everyone with containers is, oh God, any container can touch this stuff. How do we minimize that?
Excellent. Tim, again, maybe this is too far down the weeds, but is this encryption and everything, the UI to manage it, is that sort of integrated into, I've seen some, especially if you're using an OpenShift or Nginx or Ansible, I've seen UIs for, Kubernetes and so forth. Does Zeta fit in there? Does it have its own UI?
Right. So I mean, what it comes down to is a volume driver, or a CSI, if you're familiar enough with them. So what happens when, let's just use a Rancher on the top, or an OpenShift. When they call Kubernetes on the way down, they call us on the way down. We fit in seamlessly. We're not interfering. It's just an extra call down that says, all right, I'm going for that data. And on the way down, can we encrypt it and use a Zetaset encryption key to get to it? So that's where the seamless transparency part comes in. But in each one of the managements, whether it's just containers or Kubernetes or OpenShift, you have to insert yourself without inhibiting anything, or in our case, just become part of the process. And that's really where it comes. You become a call for the volume, and then we touch it. So if that makes sense,
Yeah, no, it does.
it does. Okay, great.
Next question, I guess, is I'm sorry to be peppering you with all these questions. I usually don't do this. I have a much more conversational interview. But, I'm just sitting here in my head running this all through because, quite frankly, I haven't come across encryption yet in Kubernetes and containers. And I take it as a really big positive because I think it's a real sign of maturity, right, in the market that, I think people, as we said from the outset, Kubernetes and Docker and this whole thing, it's not for the faint of heart. And if you can have someone else do it and let them manage it for you and you're good with that, amen. But, the fact that now we're saying, okay, how do we lock this down, right? And I think we're going to start seeing sort of gold standards in terms of configurations and everything. But so my question, though, is... I spoke so much I forgot my question. But, where do we, in a multi-homed environment, right? Multi-homed and multi-tenant, well, I guess it wouldn't really overlap because each tenant has their own key, has their own kind of private Idaho. So it's not an issue there at all. What about, does the size of the deployment make a difference, Tim? So, if you're having a really small one, what do you think?
I think, and that's the benefit when I started this whole conversation about being software. You can't drop a box in every data center. If you just have software and it can be scalable, I think that's the answer to your question. It's simple as that. The container. So just yesterday, in fact, we worked with Anarchist, a Docker who now is with them, to talk about that very thing about how do we encrypt within a container? How do we do it so we don't impact performance? And it's got to be software only. And it was a great conversation with them, and they get the value. And when you have even a Docker, which currently is about 89% of all containers used out there, and they're realizing, we've done everything great. We have all these tools from partners, but when it comes to the data, we got to encrypt it down at the volume level, and these guys can bring it to us. And it's not just us. I know we don't want to make this a commercial pitch. It's simply, let's espouse the fact that we need to guard this data with encryption. I gave this one analogy, which is, think about it as a castle, and the castle has a moat. The castle has thick walls. It has guard towers. It has guards. You get inside and it's probably got more locked doors. Well, at the end of the day, what if you get through all those and you get to the treasure? That's where encryption is. You still have it as your last line of defense. So it's important.
Like I'm playing Zelda.
Yeah, you're dating yourself now, Alan.
Yeah, forget that. But Tim, let me ask you a question. If you sell it as software, though, and if I have a small deployment versus a big deployment, I shouldn't pay as much. How do you price this then to fit the job?
It's we view the world of encryption as if there's infrastructure. I think in general, it doesn't matter what IT organization and how you price it. They have a certain threshold of what they're willing to pay for encrypting the data. Now, if you're saying you're 90%, if it's almost the same, no one's going to pay that. There's no value in that. But if you're down at a point where the percentage is low enough where someone goes, yeah, I get it. The value to protect is worth X percentage of the overall infrastructure cost. That's compelling. And for instance, I'll give you an example. Docker, I think we all know their pricing model is per core. And that's exactly what we do. We try to match what they do. So in conjunction with their core pricing, we give core pricing as well. So it's a nice little bundle. And in that case, just like Docker, if you only need it for, say, 100 containers, like you say, a small one, sure, we sit there with them and we'll be able to win together with small or large clients.
Got it. Tim, we're about out of time. I realized for anyone who wants more information, we didn't even give them a URL or anything. Where can they go?
They can go zetaset.com. ZETTASET.com. You should see how fast I have to do it. Zebra elephants. Everybody needs to hear that Z. You never know what they're going to say.
Absolutely. So, Tim, thanks so much for joining us and telling us about Zetaset solutions in the encrypted containerized space. We'd love to have you back on because I think we can there's more layers of this onion to peel, and we'll do that. But for now, we'll wrap it. Tim Riley, CEO of Zetaset, here on TechStrong TV. This is Alan Schimmel. We'll be right back. Hey everyone, it's Alan Schimmel, TechStrong TV. Hope you enjoyed the interview with Tim O'Reilly. You know, encrypting containers is, as I said in the interview with him, the discussion. I think it's a sign of maturity in the Kubernetes cloud native market that now we've got it up and running. We've got to harden it, and encryption is always one of the ways to do it. But let's jump over to the news now. As usual, I'm going to try to highlight some of the things we're seeing up on our media ops site, devops.com, Security Boulevard, Container Journal. And this is a small sample. There are many, many articles up there going up every day, especially on the Security Boulevard site. So have a look at them, and we can only highlight so many here. There's many more there for you if you're interested. Speaking of Security Boulevard, so one I wanted to talk to you today was an article, Best Practices for Securing a Remote Workforce. Timely, yes. With so much we're reading about the Zoom security and this security and the remote work WFH crowd, this is a good article. It gives you some good common sense things on what to do for best practices in a remote workforce, and I really, really recommend you have a look at it. The other day we had Spec Ops on talking about password security, another thing that's really in vogue right now with the work from home movement. And there's a good new DevOps chat I did there with them up on the Boulevard as well. On Container Journal, some of the big news was that Alcide is adding scanning tools for Kubernetes clusters. Again, we're seeing Kubernetes security becoming more and more to the forefront as Kubernetes matures and becomes the dominant platform for deployment. I think we'll continue to see that. Alcide is a real up-and-comer in this space, by the way. I've met with them a few times. Very good stuff. Over on devops.com, we have a couple of good stuff. We have APM and app stability, where two monitoring roads meet. And so, this whole APM, AI ops, whatever you want to call it, has been evolving, and now we're seeing the emergence of application stability as another piece in this puzzle of post-deployment, success with application. But they're not necessarily the same, stability and management and monitoring, and so there is room for both. And there's a good article on that on devops.com. Go check it out. And then the other one on devops.com that I wanted to bring to your attention was debunking 5 automated testing myths. Automated testing, some people think it's a myth in and of itself, but it's not. It doesn't mean you can automate 100% of things. But anyway, debunking 5 automated testing myths, great, real, hands-on. These are 5 things that are nonsense, and you should look at them. So those are on devops.com. Please have a look at both of them, and we can, as I said, there's much more there if you're interested to take a look. So we'll check that out. Now, with the news out of the way, if you guys are ready, I'd like to run our Working From Home Fit with Jeremy Jones. Put your computers down or put your work aside, leave your computers up, sound on. Watch Jeremy here as he's going to lead you through a personal trainer-led workout, and we'll be back after that. Jeremy, take it away.
Hey guys, Jeremy here with Media Ops. Welcome to TechStrong TV. Guys, with everything that's going on with the world right now with COVID-19, we feel like it's important now more than ever to maintain as healthy a lifestyle as possible. And with that in mind, as our resident personal trainer, I've been in group fitness for a number of years. And what I put together today is a workout with using only equipment that you find everyday households. And so with that being said, let's get started with our warm-up. All right, guys, so moving on with our warm-up, what we're gonna do is about 3, 4, 5 minutes of these warm-ups. We're gonna do each one for about 30 seconds. And by the time we're done with this, we'll be ready to get into our circuit. So starting out, we're just nice and simple. We're gonna bring our knees up, start it out with a high knee march. I'm gonna feel it throughout my hamstrings and my glutes. Try to get my knee all the way up and into my chest. If it helps, get a little bit extra stretch. You can grab your knee, kind of pull it up and in. Take it nice and easy. We're just getting started, guys. So as long as you're feeling it through the hamstrings and into your glutes, we're doing our job. So we'll go for another 3, 2, 1, and moving on up next, we're just gonna do simple arm circles. We're gonna start out nice and slow, small arm circles, get those shoulders warmed up. What we're gonna do after about 10 seconds, we're just gonna reverse it, go in the other direction. Another 5, 4, 3, 2. Now we're gonna go a little bit wider with our circles, a little bit wider with our circles. And on the 5th one, we're just gonna reverse course and go in the other direction. Again, warming up those shoulders. Good, and recover. Next up, we're gonna do some body weight squats. Weight back on your heels. We're gonna push our hips back. Make sure we're in good position, dropping all the way down as far as you can go, as long as it's still comfortable. Good, we're gonna go for another 15 seconds. So just maintain that pace. Good, now another 5, 4, 3, 2, and recover. Good, next, we're gonna go feet wider than shoulder width apart, arms extended, and we're just going to bend at the waist, reaching over, reaching down, trying to touch our toes. Keep those legs. Good. As straight as possible, keep those legs straight. Reaching down, doesn't matter if you can touch your toes, doesn't matter if you can only touch your knees. What's good is that we're getting a nice stretch. And good, we're gonna go for another 5, 4, 3, 2, and recover. Good. Next, we're gonna keep our feet wider than shoulder width apart, so keep the same position. Again, our hips are gonna go back. We're gonna lean to the right. Good, bring it up, all the way over. I want your weight back on your heels, pushing your hips back, moving laterally. You've got an IT band that runs from your knee to your hip. That's what we really want to stretch out, guys. Good, we'll go for another 5, 4, 3, 2, and recover. Good. Last but not least, we're gonna go back into our squats. Now that we're a little bit more warmed up, let's try to get a little bit deeper with our squat, and we're gonna rotate. Squat and rotate. Squat and rotate. Good, we wanna warm up our upper body, our lower body, get those joints nice and loose. If you're like me, you've been sitting at your desk at home for the past 3 weeks, isolating myself. So it's important to get nice and stretched out, get those muscles moving, get the blood moving. Good. All right, guys, now that we're all warmed up, let's jump into this circuit, and I'll go over that right now. Hey guys, now that we're all warmed up, let's jump into our circuit. So like I mentioned before, whether you're a beginner, you're intermediate, or if you're a little bit more advanced, this workout really is structured so that anybody at all fitness levels can do it. So our rep count, we're gonna maintain between 10 and 15. Again, depending on your fitness level, some people are gonna be able to do 10 reps, some people are gonna be able to do 15 reps. Again, as long as we're doing the exercises, you know, it's all about personal growth. So for my beginners, we're gonna do 2 rounds of each circuit. For my intermediate, we're gonna do 3 rounds. And for my more advanced, we're gonna go 4 rounds. And let's jump into the circuit a little bit more. First, we're gonna go push up, then the curl, squat, push press, upright row, and then lunges. We're gonna go through a circuit, and then we're gonna go back through that circuit again. What are we gonna use for weight? Glad you asked. So the item we're gonna be using today, just about everybody has a backpack at their home. For weights, we're gonna take some books. I've got my nice DevOps handbook here. We're gonna add a couple more books in here, add a little bit of extra weight. So this is what I'm gonna use for each of my exercises. So let's jump into our push-ups. All right, guys, first exercise in our circuit is gonna be a push-up. So first I'm gonna show the beginner level. So with the beginner level, we're gonna take a piece of furniture, make sure that it is set. It is not moving, all right? This is not gonna move. So what I'm gonna do is place my palms on the edge, and I'm gonna slowly lower myself to mid-chest and push. This makes it a little bit easier for those of you that aren't used to doing push-ups. That would be for the beginner level. For my intermediate, we're gonna do a standard push-up. We're not gonna quite get to our weights yet, because if you could do 10 to 15 of these, then you're in an intermediate level. So again, slowly lowering yourself to the ground. Your hand should be about mid-chest, and extend. All right? So for my more advanced, now we're gonna add the weight. We're gonna take our backpack, throw it on over our back, make sure the straps are nice and tight so they don't go sliding all over the place. And then we're gonna go right back down into push-up position. Again, down slowly and extend. Down slowly and extend. Hands mid-chest. All right, guys, we're gonna go 10 to 15 with that. If you're beginner level, nice piece of furniture. Intermediate level, you're down body weight push-ups. For my advanced, throw some weight on. All right, guys, now that we've done our push-ups, on to exercise number 2, which are bicep curls, one of my personal favorites. So for my beginner, you're gonna maybe put a little bit less weight in here. My intermediate, a little bit more weight. So it's all gonna be weight dependent. So maybe a little bit of trial and error here, that's okay. So again, our rep count is between 10 and 15. So starting out, my elbows are nice and tight by my side. I'm gonna slowly curl the bag up and lower it. All right, we're gonna go 10 to 15. Same as with our push-ups. All right, nice and slow. I don't wanna go too fast. All right, I wanna nice and slow. Don't let the bag pull me down too quickly. I wanna resist it throughout the entire motion. All right, guys, 10 to 15 here, and we'll move on to our next exercise. All right, guys, time to hit our lower body. Exercise number 3 is a body weight squat. For my beginners, just like we did in warm-ups, we're gonna drop it down into a body weight squats. Again, 10 to 15 on our rep count. Pushing our hips back, weight is back on my heels. Make sure I'm not coming forward with my knees. Keep my weight evenly distributed, nice wide base. For my intermediate, similar as the curls, I'm gonna add enough weight in here to where I'm falling within my 10 to 15 rep count. For you, that might be, 50, 60 pounds, depending. So again, now we're gonna add a little bit of weight to this. And for my advanced, feel free to add a little bit more weight for it. And good, we're gonna finish off with another 3, 2, 1, get our 10 to 15 squats in. And moving on to our next exercise. All right, guys, moving on to our next exercise. Now we have the push press. So for my push press, we're gonna go about 1/3 of a squat, and then I'm gonna use that momentum to extend up. So real quick, for my beginners, a little bit less weight. For my intermediate, a little bit more weight. For my advanced, this one is completely weight dependent. So we're gonna go 10 to 15 with our push press. Again, it's about 1/3 of a squat, and then you're pressing. 1/3 of a squat, and then you're pressing. Shoulders are in good alignment. It's out in front of you. You're using that momentum to really explode up and extend. Again, as much weight as you can bear, falling within the 10 to 15 rep count. In the last 3, 2, and 1. All right, guys, moving on to exercise number 5. Now we're gonna work our shoulders with our upright rows. So again, with my beginners, a little bit less weight, intermediate, as much weight as you could do within the 10 to 15 rep count. So with my upright row, I'm grabbing it by the top handle here. Hands are together, and I'm just gonna bring my elbows up to about shoulder height. I don't wanna go too far above my shoulder, and slowly lower it, keeping it under control the entire time. We're gonna go 10 to 15. You should be about good 20 to 30 pounds if you're an intermediate, and then you can move off of, change your weights accordingly. And we'll go another 3, 2, 1. All right, guys, last but not least, we're gonna move on to lunges. All right, guys, for the lunges, I'm gonna show you 2 different styles. There's the forward lunge, where you're stepping forward. I'm gonna take my hips, I'm gonna drop them down, and then I'm gonna step back, all right? For these, we're gonna go alternating each side. So for you, for those of you who maybe are like me, who don't have the best knees, if they get any pain with that, I find that the reverse lunge is a little bit easier on your knees. And to demonstrate that, we're just going to take a step forward and down, alternating sides. So these are your reverse lunges. So we have forward lunges and we have reverse lunges. We're still going to go 10 to 15, but it's 10 to 15 on each side. So for my intermediate and advanced, we're going to add a little bit extra weight. We're going to throw our backpack back on, and we're going to finish our count. Again, 10 to 15 on each side. Maintain good balance as always. Tighten that core and maintain good posture. Keep your shoulders back. The backpack's going to help you do that. It's going to help keep you in alignment. So we're going to go last 3, 2, and 1. All right, guys, that's it. That's the circuit. All right, we have 6 exercises. We're hitting upper body, we're hitting lower body. So hopefully you're enjoying that. And as a reminder, for my beginners, I want you to do 2 rounds of that circuit. 10 to 15 on the rep count, go through each one, push up, curl, squat, push, press, upright row, finish it off with lunges, and then you start right back up. The advantage of doing it circuit style is that the muscles are recovering while you're moving on to the next exercise, because you're using different muscles doing a push-up than you are a curl, than you are a squat. So it's called active recovery. So you can recover and move forward and be economical with your time. So for my intermediate, you're doing 3 rounds, and for my advanced, 4 rounds. Okay, guys, this is the first in a series. We're going to continue to, put these out on TechStrong TV. Hopefully you enjoyed them. I'd love to get your feedback. You can email me at Jeremy, Jeremy, at devops.com. I'd love to hear your feedback and any type of exercises or any input for future shows. I'd love to hear what you have to say. All right, thanks, guys.
I'm tired just watching Jeremy do that workout. I hope it was well. It went well for you if you did work out. As I mentioned, if you don't have time right now, we're going to have that segment as a standalone for watching up on TechStrong.tv. And if you go on there, you can put that and play it at your leisure. Well, maybe not your leisure, but at your own time when you're ready to work out. And many thanks to Jeremy for doing that. As I mentioned, we'll have him 2 or 3 times a week doing different workouts to help you stay fit at home. Next up, we have Charlene O'Hanlon, our managing editor. Charlene is going to be showcasing a conversation she had with Chris Riley of Splunk about the human factor of security at this past RSA conference in February. So, Charlene, over to you.
This is Digital Anarchist at RSA San Francisco 2020.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Charlene O'Hanlon, Managing Editor at Media Ops, which produces DevOps.com, Container Journal, Security Boulevard, and the Digital Anarchist media platform. We are at the 3rd and final day of interviews here at RSA 2020, and to my right is none other than Chris Riley, who is DevOps advocate at Splunk. Chris.
Hi.
Thanks for stopping by.
No, I'm excited, because I've done, 5 of these now, and it's all been Alan.
Well.
And I finally get to sit down with Charlotte.
Yeah. Thank you. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
Oh, it is.
All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about things. I mean, the human element specifically. So that's the theme of this year's conference. And I wrote a blog on it on Monday and I basically said that's a theme that's really open to interpretation because it can mean so many different things. What does it mean to you?
Yeah, I was actually pleasantly surprised when I saw it the first day. And
I kind of like the logo.
It's great, and it aligned very well with what I spoke at the DevSecOps days or the panel. What the human element means to me is I think that executives get very wrapped up in this idea that the people problem is kind of mushy, fluffy, and so forth. And I've been in that camp for a long time, which makes it very frustrating. It's hard to execute on culture. It's hard to execute on those things. But I'm starting to realize it's not. And I'm also starting to realize that it's more directly tied to business value than most companies want to accept. And the reason for that, and this takes kind of a lot of principles from other fields, is the modern day, the knowledge worker is starting to dominate the workforce.
Sure.
Like what our value is our brains. That's what we deliver to the organization. It's no different with developers. It's no different than with DevOps engineers, etc. So for a company, maximizing that brain power matters a lot because the more that you can maximize the brain power out of your individuals, the more that they're going to contribute to, and the faster they're going to contribute.
Right.
And the human element is acknowledging the fact that if you stifle that in any sort of way by having a culture that'll blame you if something breaks, that having lacking elements of diversity, then that knowledge worker comes to work at 60% of their capacity, and then they go through their work day and it drops because of fear, because of discomfort, and so forth. So that is actually a actual performance business problem.
I read somewhere that the average worker only spends about 90 minutes a day actually working.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where they're actually productive and getting stuff done. So, and I think you're right. I think there are a lot of elements that go into the workplace that really impact, how useful they are to the company in general. But in so many. It doesn't matter if it's DevOps, doesn't matter if it's DevSecOps, doesn't matter if it, anywhere. I've noticed the best workplaces are those where people are treated like people. They're not treated
exactly
like
right.
workers. They're not, they're not a number. They're not a, productivity count.
You come in the door, and you can just be yourself. Right. So I'll give an example of this. Splunk recently launched a neurodiversity program. And you haven't worked with me in some of the content I produce. I don't know if you've caught on to this, but I'm dyslexic. And so being in a career force with dyslexia, especially a person who cranks out a ton of content, that can be really difficult. So when we launched this program, the whole thing that went through my mind was this, there's a ton of diversity programs, and all of them are kind of architected the same way, is that when I walk in the door, I don't have to walk in with a whole bunch of restraints or walls. I'm just walking in as myself, and I can just begin my day, do my work, and then leave as myself. And there's that kind of being genuine. And what people don't realize, it sounds very kumbaya, but what people don't realize is that it relates to burnout, it relates to churn, but also, culturally, there is an efficiency element to this. And I would love for somebody to come up with the metric that can measure it.
Oh, I'm sure it's there somewhere.
Without doing personality inventories and that kind of stuff.
And that gets uploaded to the Google Cloud, and then everybody knows what kind of personality you are.
Right.
Well, it just kind of boggles my mind that we keep talking about culture as being a major part of DevOps, and you're right. It sounds very kumbaya, but at the end of the day, it's really simple. It's just a matter of supporting and treating your employees in the way that you wish to be treated. But and that all trickles back to if they feel valued, then they're going to put more into whatever it is that they do, and they're going to back up the company's programs and initiatives a lot easier, and they're going to be a lot more accepting of things in general. So I imagine if we kind of turn this to DevSecOps, the same is true. When we're talking about embracing security from a human element.
Yeah, so, and because there's another way to look at this. You can also look at it from your application backwards.
Right.
And what does your application say about the team that built it? And there's a few applications out there that make themselves ripe for exploits. But is it because, I don't know if this is true for any techie, but I think it's true for any savvy user. You know a good application when you see it. You may not be able to identify why, but you know it. And those applications that kind of scream, this was built in not a high-performing team, kind of call attention and go, hey, there's probably some exploits here that you can take advantage of. And I can actually name 4 applications.
But you won't.
I won't.
Okay.
That I know of. They're in the consumer space. They're not in the tech space that, we use on a regular basis in our neighborhood that have exactly that. And they have been exploited.
But they haven't
from
been...
a social engineering standpoint, but they have been exploited because you can tell kind of how badly managed these applications are. They did not come from high-performing development teams.
But they continue to be exploited. They haven't been updated. They haven't been upgraded. They haven't been made human-centric.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah,
it's an interesting thought. It's an interesting observation, and I wonder if it's ever going to change, really. I mean, do you think we're going to get to the point where that human element is really the first element of security?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think in large companies, like Jasmine from Delta, I think you see this huge element of stewardship where there's teams that are literally built to steward the culture, the best practices, doing things like dojo. Dojos are very tactical, like you do technical things, but dojos are also, this is how we act as a high-performing team.
Right.
So it's more, I really think, like, once you start seeing companies like Delta do things like this, I think absolutely they start to see the value of embracing and investing in it, because it's not a small investment. I mean, I get it. You look at it from a bottom line in budgeting, it's a cost that it's hard to trace where it actually went.
Yeah. But at the same time, it can be, because if you start to see customer attrition, if you start to add up the costs from an exploit or a vulnerability being breached, all those things, there are numbers attached to that.
Yeah.
So it may sound like it's an intangible, but it's very much. You definitely can measure that in numbers.
Right.
So.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting.
I think you can.
I wonder. This time next year, do you think we're going to see a little bit more of the human element involved?
Well, I hope this time next year there isn't a continued virus that potentially shuts down the show.
Yeah, that's the other human element.
Yeah, I do. I really hope, and it's kind of my charter right now, my personal kind of goal is to help companies directly align the human element with the business value, because nothing ultimately gets done until you tie it to business.
Yeah.
Whether it's churn, whatever it is, you have to tie it to business, and developers have to realize this too. They have to tie what they do to the business some way.
But they're going to be a lot more willing and apt to do it if they feel like what
and
they're
it's not
doing
just
is
wearing
valued.
hoodies.
So.
I mean, I walked in here in a hoodie. It's not just
hoodie,
that doesn't mean culture, It's beyond
means
that.
Culture, but that's another story for another time, right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, Chris, thanks so
Charlene,
much for taking a couple times.
And I just realized this is the exact same shirt I wore last time I did one of these. But
Well,
anyways,
you were with Alan,
I'm
and
very
I wasn't
thematic.
wearing this
Yeah,
shirt.
this
so
is
there you
great.
go.
Thank you.
All right, guys, stick around. We're going to have a lot more interviews today throughout the day, day 3 of our interviews at RSA 2020. So please stick around.
Disruption is occurring across every aspect of IT. Open source, cloud services, DevOps, and cloud-native software architectures are democratizing IT and radically transforming how business is done. The old ways of creating software and doing IT are being replaced with agile, flexible, faster, and cheaper methods, benefiting vendors and users alike. Accelerated Strategies Group is out to democratize access of industry expertise and knowledge. We use our expertise and experience to offer insightful, intelligent, useful information in a variety of formats relevant to the IT community: digital events, videos, reports, assessments, workshops, and implementation projects with tech vendors, IT organizations, and business leaders. We widely and openly share our work products, often for free. Analyst reports these days aren't worth more than a graph or chart that tells a story or illustrates a market trend. We work with developers, DevOps teams, cloud architects, security engineers, and transformation leaders most every day, creating and implementing transformational strategies and technologies. We're not just thinkers, we're also doers.
All right. Thanks, Charlene, and thanks to Chris Rowley. Chris has been a friend for many, many years of us here at MediaOps, I think since I started DevOps.com, and glad to see him doing great things over at Splunk as well. Next up is a regular feature. It's our daily moment with Mitch in the Analyst Corner. Mitchell Ashley, CEO of Accelerated Strategy Group. And Mitch is launching a new flash poll for this week about online meeting security. What a surprise. Top of the news. And he'll tell you more about it as well as some other things. So let's hand things over to Mitchell.
Well, we had a really great week last week. We launched our new flash poll, excellent response, shared some of the analysis and results with you. And we had some really good segments, the followers' needs, talking about all kinds of business transformation in response to the current economic and COVID situation. So we do have a new poll this week that I want to touch on briefly. You know, I expect there to be a very different new normal. I don't think we're just going to snap back to working how we were 3, 4, 6, 8 weeks ago. Very likely that we'll see some shifts because it's, to me anyway, I'm certainly no public health official, but I have to imagine that we're going to be concerned about exposure for some time. So there'll be a lot of controls and things that we'll want to do in our own personal lives just to be safe. So one of the questions that we asked for this week's flash poll was working from home and how individuals felt about that, whether they felt it was something that they would like to do permanently, they would like to do, you know, several days a week, maybe they're already working from home, or they expect to just return back to working normal when that situation allows it. So I'm very interested in seeing the final results. We already have a huge number of responses to it and some pretty interesting things coming across the flash poll. So we'll be reading out the results of that at the end of this week. So I do want to touch on my conversations about the changes in our business model and how we'll have to respond to whatever the economic downturn is and then the climb out of that. Having gone through a few of those, things like 9/11, the mortgage crisis, and a few before that, I have a few gray hairs. It seems those, you know, we're always optimistic or hopeful about how long they'll take. They usually take longer than we expect. The numbers that I've seen are a year and a half to get through an economic downturn, sometimes 2. And coincidentally, that's also some numbers that I've seen for in a pandemic or epidemic, usually around a year and a half plus to get through the whole cycle, to get a vaccine out and really get the population covered safely and the virus under control. Hopefully that's, you know, we don't have anything longer than that. That seems like a long time already for COVID. But if that's the case, whatever that pattern looks like for us. So I've talked about supply chains. I've talked about responding with digital technology and also with how we work at home. And I feel like we're still in this settling in period. People are settling in with doing meetings online, doing kind of basic office work. Also, kids are at home, family at home, spouse, etc. Balancing all of that and figuring out some kind of a pattern or routine that works for all of that. And the rest of the organization being flexible with that too, because we're all having to adjust in different ways. But I think there's also other kinds of work that potentially will change substantially. I've talked about some of the digital transformation, restaurants changing, electronic store. I've had some other experiences that weren't as positive, actually. Needed to pick up some goods from our home supply store, and they are an essential business, so they're open. And I'm not going to say which chain it was, but let's say there was absolutely no social distancing being practiced there. Matter of fact, the place was overrun with people. And I actually had put in a pickup order. I called, bring to your curbside pickup order. They were so busy they couldn't even answer the phone to do that. And so I didn't even mess with it. And we went back early this morning and picked up what we need. And they did a delivery out to our car. But it was amazing, the transformation. We noticed that there was a police car that was slowly patrolling through the parking lot. And lo and behold, there's signs, there's chains, there's marks on the ground for distancing, 6-foot distancing. The place had transformed literally overnight from doing, I think, essentially nothing, very little to nothing, to really having to follow CDC guidelines. Now, all of that said, there are a lot of experiences that we have today that, a bit of an inconvenience. And as our kind of generational population continues to grow, and population like my kids that are in their 20s and 30s continue to, live their lives out, they're used to doing things in a digital world, especially my younger adults that are in their 20s. And we also had an experience with using recently a mobile app for submitting a claim for a car damage, just some minor damage to a car. And it was a fantastic experience. Take some photos, it scanned the VIN number, all the things you needed to do, put in some notes. Do you want to be notified by text or by email? How do you wish to interact with us? It was an amazing experience. And I thought, how many times have I gone to the auto repair department, in my life? There's been a few. But I usually have to go after work, find a time where I can get in, where they have an estimator available. Maybe the shop's closed down, but they're open till 6 o'clock and you got to get there, whatever. Why would I ever want to go into another auto body shop other than to drop a car off? And maybe even not for that. Maybe they'll have a pickup service or something. So I think there are many areas where we can look at and we will have to look at our businesses to transform how we deliver services and the kind of work that our employees do while they're working from home, and even after that, if they stay for some substantial time or even part of the time working from home. So I am interested, and thank you for the responses that I've gotten from folks, received from folks who shared some of the digital experiences that you're taking on. If you would like to share something with me, and if you'd like me to share it online or not, that's fine too. You can reach out to me at mitchell@accelst.com. And we'll be highlighting some of those things together as we kind of pull some of this content that we're collecting both in our research and also input we've received from you. So a lot of great research going on. We have a new book that's being launched by one of our analysts. I won't say yet who it is because that's going to happen a little bit later, I think this week on the site. So I'm excited for him to get that out, and a lot of great information on our site as well. So be sure and check out the Accelerated Strategies Group site because we have tons of content in addition to all the great things that appear, of course, here on TechStrong TV. Thank you for listening.
DevOps.com is the #1 online destination for DevOps education and community building. DevOps.com covers all aspects of DevOps, including DevOps best practices and tools, DevOps culture, DevSecOps, business impact, continuous testing, continuous delivery, and more. DevOps.com has the largest collection of original DevOps content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.devops.com to learn more. DevOps.com, where the world meets DevOps.
All right. Thanks, Mitchell. That was great. All right, folks, we have one more segment before we wrap up today, and it's one of my favorites. It's Mike Vizard, who's going to give us some no-nonsense real talk about the channel. Take it away, Mike.
Hey, thanks, Alan. So things are going better than we thought with this whole pandemic, at least from a fatality perspective. We're not seeing quite as many people passing away as we originally thought. And we may be getting through this thing from a healthcare perspective. May, June, we're talking about opening up the country. And of course, there's lots of alleged funding available going through the Small Business Administration to banks. But looks like small businesses in particular are having a hard time tapping into that. Seems that no one has quite relaxed the credit rules enough, so we're not seeing enough cash going into these businesses. And of course, those businesses include many solution providers who are also struggling for cash itself. So it's a bit of good news to say that HPE this week announced that they were making $2 billion available for credit for people who wanted to drive IT projects forward at this time. They rightly pointed out that the big issue right now is liquidity. People are husbanding their cash for payroll and everything else that they can think of, so they're not making that available for IT projects. I think many other of the larger companies will pitch in here soon. I think everybody's going to come to the conclusion that the federal government may not be able to live up to its commitments, and Congress will continue to debate what to do about additional funding for some time. And, well, we're just running out of time on the economic side. So hopefully there'll be more cash available for partners. Go ask the bigger vendors what they intend to do. Press them, for that matter, because, frankly, a lot more of them should be doing a lot more than they are. Meanwhile, on other fronts, Poly this week announced that it finally brought together the two channels that it has from its Polycom and Plantronics offerings. It's interesting because, of course, these devices, including speakers and headsets, are in very short supply these days. So the timing of this is kind of good. But on the other hand, it is true it's going to be very hard to get this stuff for quite some time. The folks at Poly were telling me that the issue is manufacturing lines are ramping up in China again, but nobody can get anything onto an actual container ship because competition for that space is fierce. So it may take a little bit before we see that supply chain open up a little bit more. Also of interest this week, Big Panda, a provider of a IT operations platform, is making its software available to end customers for free for 90 days. Their idea is that, hey, we'll just take advantage of this moment to highlight the fact that with so many IT people trying to work from home, a lot of those platforms were never designed to actually do that, and they certainly weren't designed for highly distributed environments involving the cloud. And it's interesting to watch how smaller companies and startups are taking advantage of this moment to really make their software available for a nominal cost to gain share. The larger vendors seem to be moving down a model that says, hey, we're just going to make the payment schedules a little more relaxed because they're the incumbents. So we're starting to see a little bit of a dichotomy here in terms of how vendors are approaching this. Of course, as one old publisher of mine reminded me, he said, hey, Mike, it's a lot easier to throw grenades than it is to catch them. So I think we're seeing a lot more grenades starting to be thrown. Also draw your attention this week to Diamanti. They make a appliance that runs Kubernetes on bare metal. They announced a technology alliance program this week, so they'll be partnering with other providers of software to put bundles together on that platform. I think this is going to be a growth space for the next year or so, so keep an eye on that. Meanwhile, VMware extended its network virtualization software this week. They're really making an effort to make it possible to programmatically manage networking at the software level. And this is significant because they're making a claim that says, hey, if we move more stuff into the software space, we're going to get rid of a lot of these physical appliances. And in a lot of cases, the money that we can save by getting rid of those appliances is significant. Not only is it just the maintenance, but it's also all the support licenses and all the people who are needed to manage those appliances on a physical level get replaced by a more software-driven approach that essentially turns networking into a programmable service. I think this may not happen overnight, but I think when budgets are tighter, a lot of people are going to want to listen to that story. Now, the thing that's coming over the hill, though, is there's this thing called the service mesh and it basically is a set of platforms for managing how microservices connect to each other, and it sits on top of things like Kubernetes typically. As this goes forward, these service meshes are going to be programmable, and what's going to happen is a lot of the physical appliances will become now extensions of the service mesh. There's a company this week called Solo.io that made a service mesh hub available as open source software, so you should definitely check that out to get a glimpse of what the future of networking services might look like. Finally, this week, Google went out and named a bunch of partners as their partners of the year, as it were. One of those was CloudBees, which makes a CI/CD platform for building applications. And I would just draw your attention to this because the rate at which applications are going to move into the cloud has been going fast, but it's about to go exponentially faster. What we're seeing is a lot of organizations are saying, hey, we need our application portfolio to be more resilient to these types of business disruptions. And that means that the application itself needs to be accessible from anywhere, and that's going to push more people into the cloud as part of their overall business continuity strategy. So partners should take a look at that, keep an eye on it, and start having those conversations because, as we have previously noted, a lot of those digital business strategies that people have been playing around with are now their business continuity strategies. And with that, thanks everybody for paying attention, and back to you, Alan.
SecurityBoulevard.com is the leading resource for news, analysis, and education on challenges facing the cybersecurity industry. SecurityBoulevard.com covers all aspects of cybersecurity, including data security, DevSecOps, cloud security, application security, network security, security threats, and more. SecurityBoulevard.com has the largest selection of security content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.securityboulevard.com to learn more. SecurityBoulevard.com, home of Security Bloggers Network.
All right. So it was a full Monday here. I hope you all enjoyed it. I hope you get a chance to, if you didn't do it while it was broadcasting, download or at least go watch the Working From Home Fit with Jeremy when you're ready for a good little workout. Also, I didn't mention our Slack channel, TechStrongTV.slack.com. Check that out. I'd love to hear your feedback on the fitness piece, on any other of the segments that we ran today. And we'll be back here tomorrow for Tuesday, April 14th, with another full show of new content and maybe some good old content as well. We'll see what's in the works there. But until then, this is Alan Schimmel for TechStrong TV on the Digital Anarchist Network. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Stay safe.